and I had the bottle of Jamison's in one hand, I had the bottle of opioid pills in the other, and 2 o'clock in the morning, my 2-year-old son at the time walked in. He always slept through. He was a dream sleeper. Walked into the bathroom and said, "Dada, what are you doing?"
Mm.
And I fell to my knees in that moment. And I now look back at that and I say, love interrupted the story.
Many people want to be leaders. Fewer understand what it really means to lead people well. So what separates the two? Welcome to the Lead with Purpose podcast with your host, Merv Jersek. Each week, you'll hear honest conversations with leaders who have been in the trenches and have stories to tell. They'll share their practical wisdom to help cut through the noise and get to the heart of leadership. So let's get started.
Hey, welcome to another edition of the Lead with Purpose podcast. Today's guest is a friend that I've just learned to work with under the auspices of the LA Tribune. And his name is Jeff Ross, all the way from what we call here in the U.S., from down under, from Tasmania. And by the way, he's not to be confused with the U.S. comedian and roastmaster general Jeff Ross here in the U.S. So again, our Jeff Ross, the one we're talking to today, is the creator and host of the Laptop Lifestyle Dad Show. And I want Jeff, can you give us just a little bit of intro of what you are doing right now, and then we'll get right into the interview.
Yeah, sure. And thank you, Murph, for bringing me on as a guest. Absolutely thrilled to be here. Bit of an intro. Okay, I wear many hats, as most serial entrepreneurs do. My wife and I started an online church about 18 months ago, so I'm working to be an accredited pastor. I'm the ambassador of the Los Angeles Tribune here for Australia and New Zealand, working very closely with my mentor and business partner, Michael Silvers and Mary Glorifield and Dr. Joseph McClendon. So I'm also the vice president of field development and growth for a company called Finance Pro. I have my own community, my own podcast, and I'm a coach, I'm a mentor. But probably the hat that I'm most proud to wear is father of 3 amazing young boys and husband to my beautiful wife Sarah.
And I take it that's where the Laptop Lifestyle Dad Show title comes from.
Yeah, it's definitely a part of the whole journey. I've been in this game for 17 years, and I had a bit of an accident that maybe forced my career and have a bit of a direction there. But I grew up in an environment where my father was, he was a very hard worker. He was a truck driver, basically carting hay around the country. And I never got to see my father growing up pretty much. Like, he was always busy, always working. Like, yes, we had all the toys. I had all the horses. I had all that. But I would have given all that up to have more quality time with my father. So when I had kids, it's like, right, well, I'm going to go the complete opposite. I'm going to figure out how to work from home and be present as a father for my boys. And it's not that my father, I'm sure he would have done that if he could. It was a different time. And but I chose to, create a lifestyle on purpose by design, being able to, have the flexibility and the freedom to show up when I want to show up, how I want to show up, and where I want to show up.
So you mentioned horses. I also grew up on a farm, but in Canada. You mentioned horses, and I read somewhere that you had a near fatal horse accident. How did that kind of contribute to, and I understand the part about you wanting to become closer to your kids and stuff, but how did that
Mm.
contribute to your lifestyle dad, your perhaps move into a leadership aspect? How did that work for you as a leadership case study almost?
Yeah, great question. Look, some things happen in life that they're just, I don't know, they're serendipitous or whatever. Like, I wouldn't wish, my worst enemy have to go through what I had to go through with the recovery and the injury and all that. But I've come down now, down this side of my life to learn to be grateful for that, because it was a pivotal moment in my life where everything transformed and changed, and it helped me to lean into the person, that I could become in this space in the leadership arena and all that. Without that accident, I don't know if I'd be here where I am. I'd probably be still just working on horse studs, or you guys in America call them cattle, ranches, that space and whatnot. And, I grew up, I left school at year 9. I had, my life's dream was to be a cowboy. And I achieved that dream very, very early on. And, I rode bulls. I went, mustering and, big cattle stations up in North Queensland. And it was a great life, but it was a lot of hard yakka type sort of work. And then around 26, I had a horse jump on my neck.
Oh,
And lucky to be talking, lucky to be walking, lucky to be all of that. But that injury, what it did for me is it pretty much rode me off that game. Like it basically, the doctors said, can't do that anymore. There's nothing much we can do for you. You're going to have to live the rest of your life on a disability pension, pretty much. And as you can imagine, young man growing up in the 90s and early 2000. I don't know like what it was like in America or Canada, but Australia, it was very much in that culture was very much that macho sort of masculinity type sort of culture. And it's basically like cowboy up, work hard, play hard, and, stiff upper lip sort of type attitude. And that's my environment. That's what I grew up in. So when the doctors pretty much took that lifestyle, that dream away from me, because I ended up with like 3 crushed discs in the back of my neck and
oh,
impinging on my nerves and my C3, 4, and 5. And basically my brachial plexus area and my nerves and all that are shot. So my right arm's pretty much like I've got a lot of movement in it now. I've had to do a lot of intense physio, but I had lost the ability on my right arm.
wow.
And
So if I were to shake your hand, it's going to be a little bit weaker than I'm used to. Is that what you're saying?
Most times, yes. Like
Right.
I've built it up a fair bit over the last couple of decades, but yeah, it's I suffer from a lot of nerve damage in my right
Oh,
arm, and basically from that I ended up with chronic pain syndrome. I get a lot of migraines, like neuralgia attacks in the back of my head and stuff, and I've had to deal with that over the last 15, 20 odd years now, whatever it is. To manage that, and mindfulness is definitely one of those things that have helped me manage it. But that whole accident, I went through a major identity crisis. For about probably 4 to 5 years of that period was one of my lowest times of my whole life, and I got to the crux of it where I actually did try to kill myself.
oh, wow.
I went through a major identity crisis. I became a very angry, hurting, abusive individual. I just got married. We had our couple, Harrison and Lachlan, we're starting our family, and the whole world pretty much got taken away from me. And I had a very good friend and mentor back then kick me in the ass with love. And he said, Jeff, you got the rest of your life to live. What are you going to do with it?
So
And
here's what I'm sensing from a leadership perspective. Number one, you had to learn resilience, and I think that's a core part of being a leader.
of course,
But using that resilience, I'm sensing also, and you can say yay or nay to this, that you had to learn to lead yourself before you learned, therefore, to lead others. Is that, have I got that
right.
close?
Yeah, 100%. So what I say to people in this story is love interrupted the pattern. I got to the point where I basically thought the world would be better off without me. And it was 2 o'clock one November. It was actually 1 November, no, it was actually late November, early December evening. And I had the bottle of Jamison's in one hand. I had the bottle of opioid pills in the other. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, my 2-year-old son at the time walked in. He always slept through. He was a dream sleeper. Walked into the bathroom and said, Dada, what are you doing?
Hmm.
And I fell to my knees in that moment. And I now look back at that and I say, love interrupted the story, because obviously if I'd gone down that path, and if you are, to our audience, I always make sure if you're hurting in this space, seek help, make sure you reach out, talk to someone, because that's what I ended up having to do. And it was one of the best things that I could do to realize that I still had a lot of value to give to the world. And in that identity crisis, I found myself, like at the bottom of that barrel. I found myself in the space where, at this time in my life, I didn't believe in God. I was an atheist, and so in this time, I learned to say basically, I learned how to love myself. I learned how to love something bigger than myself, i.e., Jesus. And I learned, through that, I learned how to become a better husband. I learned how to become a better father. I learned how to become a better friend. And, through learning how to love myself and God, I learned how to love others.
So that's interesting because you and I shared the fact that I've recently written a book called Lead Smarter, Not Harder. but I need to add a chapter on love now because that I missed that whole part of being part
right?
of leadership. You have to be able to reach out and be able to love yourself
Well,
and others. So
and I think that's a very, very important chapter to be put in your book because if you can't lead yourself, how can you lead others?
yeah,
And if you can't love yourself, how can you love others?
yeah. How
And
can
I
you
think,
reach out?
I think in today's world, we skip over this because of it's the mushy, it's the romanticized version of it all. But that's not love. Love is kind. Love is patient. Love is mercy. Love is, you know, all of that to yourself as well. Because you can't operate out of a full cup, out of abundance, out of joy, out of peace without love. Love is the center and the heartbeat of it all.
Yeah, and if we're looking at it from a being able to do an emotional intelligence response to people around us, that's part of it, right? Is to show that
Of
compassion, that
course,
empathy, that love.
of
Yeah, that's
course.
great.
And so yeah, and one of the big things that I now know looking back is I was so hard on myself.
Yeah.
In that deepest depression, in that darkest point, like, man, I was like I was hurting, and I'm not proud of the fact I was angry and a bit verbally abusive to my wife and at the time, and I'm so grateful that she learned how to forgive, and or she taught me how to forgive, and I learned so much about forgiveness and grace and love in that situation from Sarah. But, she stood by me, she fought for our marriage. Our marriage is as strong today as it is. We actually had our 15th wedding anniversary just recently,
Nice.
that's because Sarah fought for us and taught me how to fight for us as well in that space, and without love, truly, we've got nothing.
So so somewhere along the line in that whole process, you became what you call the caffeinated kangaroo. Can you explain that?
Right. Yeah. So over the last, little while now, since about 2009 to today, I've just become a student of buy-in psychology. I've become a student of leadership. I've become a student of marketing communication. In that space, like being an evangelist, brand ambassador, whatever title you want to call it. And out of all the books that I've read in this space over the last decade and a bit, I reflect back to dot-com secrets from Russell Brunson,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and he talked about having a customer avatar, like a character of the story. And in this book, he talks about the subway guy. The Subway, Subway launched their whole brand. If you remember when they launched their brand off this big fat guy. I can't remember his name now, but he ate nothing but Subway, and he lost weight through the whole journey. So the brand had a character, it had a narrative, it had a story around it
Mhm.
all. So I've just been obsessed with what I call story selling. If you look even way back thousands of years, how basically Christianity was born off the back of stories
Yeah.
and truths and parables and all of that, right? So part of a really good brand, if you really reflect on it, see, a brand is not a logo. It's not your colors. It's not your fonts. It's not even the style you use. It's the emotion that you evoke out of people to be able to get them to connect and belong. So, I was playing around with AI probably about a bit over 3 years ago now when ChatGPT sort of first launched, and I've read all these books, right? And so I don't have a university degree in marketing or sales and business. I've gone through the school of Knox, through the school of hard life, and I've just been a student, and I've just been obsessed in this space. I've read everything that I can, but I was never able to really pull it together until recently. So thanks to AI, I put all of these wisdoms, these truths, out of the books that I've learnt in this space. And so this is not a replacement. This is a partnership. And I said to AI, I said, look, I need to come up with a character for my brand, and I want you to help me to work this out. And so I loved Steve Irwin when he was around. I loved his energy, and I loved his iconic, crikey's Terry,
Yeah.
look at that
Crikey.
marvelous specimen, you know. And back here in the '90s in Australia, there was another really iconic character that everybody in Australia knows as Big Kev. He sold cleaning products of all things, but his catchphrase and the way he delivered was "I'm excited," like
Yeah.
really got right into it. And so I gave ChatGPT these sort of, frameworks of what it was. And I said, look, and a couple of other American iconic brands and that sort of thing that I like. And I said, I need to come up with a catchphrase. I'm sick of just saying I'm fired up, or I'm super pumped, or
Mhm.
the cliches that everybody else do.
Yeah.
And so it started coming around with a few. It came up with three that come up at the top of the mind. One was I'm as excited as a caffeinated kangaroo bouncing around a trampoline. So that's the one I ran with. The other one was my mate Dave took it. He says I'm as pumped up as a platypus at a pool party, and the other one is I'm as excited as a Tasmanian devil, bouncing around in a tinny. A tinny is a small aluminium boat. So I thought I'd have to explain that every second time, so that didn't work, and the
Yeah.
platypus wasn't for me. So the caffeinated kangaroo was born, and I've just been playing with that and having a lot of fun with that ever since.
Well, and I think for people who are listening to this thinking, well, what's that got to do with leadership? What you just did was you went through several things. First of all, leaders are readers. Leaders are readers, but more than just readers, they're appliers. So you applied that. Then you took the tools of the latest offerings, being Chat GPT or AI, and said, what can you do for me? You use it as a tool, not as a substitute for your own creativity.
Right?
So all of that lends itself into how am I going to lead myself, and therefore how can I lead others? Because I'm a reader and I use tools and
Yeah.
I'm creative. I'm creative. So that's
And
great.
And the leadership principle behind this is funny. As soon as I started the caffeinated kangaroo, well, obviously Dave jumped on. We had the pumped up platypus born. We had the Lux lioness. We had the Kaching koala. We had quite a few other mascots coming together because people have, oh, that's genius, Jeff. Let's follow your lead. And so I had people, just without me actually even encouraging him to do it or knowing strong call to action or sales process, people sort of jumped onto that. And it's fascinating now, like in my echo chamber, in my circle of influence, there's a lot of these little mascots popping up around everywhere. Sarah, my beautiful wife, she started a podcast this year, and she's got the Taboo Talk with Sarah as a podcast, and she's come up with a little dragon mascot for her stuff. And so
Nice.
that there's a lot. There's actually like a masterclass just in that conversation, just in itself.
Well, I was thinking as a Canadian, maybe I can be busy as a beaver, but that doesn't sound like much of a leader. That sounds more like a worker bee, right?
Yeah, right. You'd have to play around with that, I think.
So one thing I'm interested in, because you mentioned that you were a serial entrepreneur, therefore you do a lot of work from your office, basically from your home office. But what I want to understand a little bit, because you've shown how busy you are, the whole fatherhood thing is important to you. Your marriage
Yes.
is important to you. How is it that you, therefore, from a leadership perspective, give yourself that time freedom to be able to take care of family as well as what it is that you do to put food on the table?
Yeah, brilliant question. I think for starters, you've got to get very clear on what your strengths and your weaknesses are. So you got to understand, like go do Gallup Strength Finder or Enneagram or any of those profiles to understand yourself. This is that know yourself, right? That love
Mhm.
yourself conversation. So it starts with there. And then it's understanding what are the core values that, you hold dear, that, you operate in and how you show up. And then it's also understanding what is your life's mission, purpose driven statement, and then making sure your family, your wife, your kids, and everything like that are bought into that vision, bought into that mission. And so, like our family, if you will, is treated a bit like a brand, a business in that space and whatnot. And so they have a part to play in facilitating that mission and vision, and and the way that they show up. Our 13-year-old son, he edits our podcast and produces and publishes all of our podcasts, and he gets paid for it. I pay him $30 an episode. He's
Nice.
one of the wealthiest kids in year 7 in his whole grade. So he's bought in on it, and he feels like he's contributing. So it becomes a family affair, if you will. Now, now let's backtrack a little bit here. I truly believe, and I've debunked this, and I've proven it, in so many examples. This whole thing about work-life balance, it's absolutely bullshit in today's world. It's a myth.
Yes.
And
I agree.
I don't believe that you can have, if you're trying to have this whole dream of, I work this block of hours and this block of hours is for my family and all that sort of thing, you're just setting yourself up to fail. And I've seen it so
Absolutely.
many times, people fail over their feet, trip over their own feet trying to achieve that dream. It's just not possible in today's world. It may have been used to be possible back in the 1950s, but not today. I don't believe it is today. And because of the cost of inflation, inflation and all of that, people are struggling to make ends meet. So I truly believe this is where I come down to it is what we need to have is an integrated lifestyle, integrated
Yeah,
balance. Now let me
good.
unpack this. I'm trying to think of the mentor and the coach who wrote about this book now. I've gone blank on his name. I've actually got Jim Collins, I think it might have been. Anyway, basically the principle here of the whole conversation is put the big rocks in first.
Mhm.
So I'm very disciplined. I have my calendar. I operate out of my calendar, and that's my boundary. That's my rules of play, if you will, my operating system. If it's not in my calendar, it doesn't get done. But I'm also very strict and disciplined to managing my calendar. And when I sit down, I do it every 90 days. And because you can creep over it, and you can have exceptions to the rule, and you can start making excuses and all of that. But I basically sit down every 90 days and I do a reset where I put the big rocks in first. The big rocks are family first, faith, family, faith, and fun.
Mhm.
They're some of the big rocks. So, we date our children. Sarah and I, we make sure that we take once a quarter where we're doing one-on-one dates. I took my son to Japan, just me and him went to Japan for 10 days for his 13th birthday. I'll be doing the same for the other two as well. Harrison and I went on went to Southeast Asia on an immersion sort of mission trip there about 18 months ago. I took Lachlan to our middle child to Thailand with me for a couple of weeks. So we travel a lot, and
Good.
I do one-on-one travel with them. And Sarah will start to do the same thing as they grow a bit older as well. But we also do things like go to the bowling alley. I just took Jackson, our youngest, to the bowling alley, just me and him, and played temping bowling. Go fishing with the boys. Just go for a coffee and a milkshake. So we date our boys in that space. And Sarah's very busy as well. She's got her podcast, and she's a resilience coach, and supports that, and obviously helps support the family. She's the glue to our family. But it's about making sure we're intentional with putting the big rocks in first. And so, I start my day at 4:30 every morning, and I spend half an hour with God,
Cool.
and I'm very intentional with that. And it's those disciplines in that space. And I from around about 5 a.m. in the morning till probably about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm on calls like this, doing podcast interviews or coaching calls. From 3 o'clock in the afternoon till kids' bedtime, I'm with the family, or I'm catching up on other projects, or we're doing something fun together. And as the boys are growing older now, they don't want, they've got their own lives, their own
Yeah.
friends, and that type of thing. We're going through a shift, and this is the thing, right? It's not been, that's why I say it needs to be done every 90 days. It's not been attached to the way things are, because what's got us here is not going to get us where we need to be. So
Right.
it's learning to let go of what's good to always focusing on going from good to great.
So without me even asking you, you just threw in three more of my leadership principles, and that is
There you go.
time management, discipline, and prioritization. Excellent. Fantastic. So as we wind down, I've got some real quick questions for you.
Cool. Let's
Fa-
go.
Favorite Aussie dad joke?
Aussie dad joke. Oh, that's a hard one. I'll give you one off the top of my head.
Yep.
It's my Goldie, my favorite one. I married my wife for her beautiful looks, just not the ones that she gives me these days.
That's great. What's your favorite Aussie meal?
Bangers and mash,
Bacon. All right. How
sausage,
about
sausages, and mashed potato.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I got it because I just spent some time in Ireland a little while ago. So,
There you go.
American football or Australian rules rugby?
I have to be NRL, so National Rugby League. So it's a different game altogether.
Yeah,
But yeah, NRL, and Penrith Panthers are my team.
man. If I can find Australian rules on my TV, I go there all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a brutal game.
It's one of the hardest games out there. It's definitely like you guys with gridiron, like you get padded up and you got the helmets. We don't have any of that.
No, no, and I don't think our male football teams could deal with some of your female rugby teams. I've seen those girls too.
Right.
They're-
Yeah,
they are
they tackle
tough.
pretty hard.
Yeah, they are
They're
tough.
pretty rough.
All right, so let's, as we wind this down, where can people find you if they want to get hold of you? And clearly, you're a day ahead of even me on this podcast, but that has never stopped you. So, where can people find you? How can they get hold of you?
Yeah, great question. So laptoplifestyledads.com is our website. You can find us, the Laptop Lifestyle Dad Show, on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. We're partnered up with the Los Angeles Tribune Podcast Network, so you can find us there as well. But also, we've just started a Facebook group. It's a free community focused on helping serve aspiring leaders and heroes in the making, and other hero makers like yourself, Merv. We can come and contribute. We do our own summits. We've got our own summit coming up next week where we've got Mary Glorifield being interviewed by Michael Silvers and a few other really awesome VIP speakers. So the Hero Facebook group is called the Hero Makers Community, and you can find us there and come join our community, and love to be of service to you.
Excellent. So, ladies and gentlemen, you have been listening to Jeff Ross, all the way from down under in Tasmania, creator and host of the Laptop Lifestyle Dad Show and a leader extraordinaire. Thank you for being my guest today, Jeff. And I'm sure we'll discuss these kinds of things again. And I do want to hear more about your Hero Makers podcast, your Hero Maker season. So, with that,
Beautiful. Thank you.
we're going to sign off and come back and see us next time.
If today's conversation added value, make sure you subscribe. And if this episode resonated, please leave a quick review to help other leaders discover the show. And remember, leadership works best when you put people first. Let's lead with purpose, together.